Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Hey, Sankit.
Hi, is everyone quiet or is it just me?
We're all quiet.
We're all quiet. Okay.
Probe says that his last meeting is running over, and so he'll be here shortly.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
while we're all sitting here contemplating if Chrome's going to show, does anybody have items that were on the agenda that wants to get started? Not sure if the CSUBVEX working group or the MVD consortium stuff has anybody here representing it.
I could speak to CSUBVEX working group. Yeah, there's not much going on. We had a holiday. We meet on Mondays. We lost last week to a holiday. We're losing next week to a holiday in the US federal holidays. And continuing to work on a when to issue VEX guidance, bit of guidance document. That's the main summary, working on a code drafting, a document in volunteer group issues are the main thing. So, but there's progress. What was the other item you mentioned?
I'm looking at the last one there as well.
Yeah,
MVD consortium participant interest.
That rings a bell. Oh. Yeah, sorry. I don't think I can speak to that one. Sorry, does someone have the you're looking at the minutes to the notes document. Do you have that handy? I'm sure I have it in a tab somewhere.
Yeah, I can throw the minutes over here.
Sure, thank you.
Looks like Madison beat me to it.
Oh, cool. Thank you. MVD. Whoops, did not mean to delete that. Oh, good.
No, sorry, I think that was me.
That was you. Okay.
I added that link there thinking that is what that could be about. I don't know for sure, but sounded similar.
Yeah, I'm curious what that is. I have a hint, I have a suspicion, but I probably should ask before suspect. First piece cert, let's see. Aha. Eat it, kids. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, other than that, the normal items on the list here, we've got like intros for anybody new to the group. If anybody wants to introduce themselves, we can knock that one out.
So Crob joined. If we want to kind of loop him in.
Oh, there he is. Crob.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late.
Take over. We're struggling without you.
Oh, I thought you were doing a great job. I don't have to run every call I'm in.
But they're a lot better when you do.
Oh, dear. So we were looking to see if there was any new friends in the group. All right. Art, do you want to share anything from S-Bomberama or anything from the VEX working group?
Yeah, I had we started talking a little bit. VEX working group. We've got some Monday holiday things going on just to slow us down a little bit, but otherwise working on when to issue VEX guidance document, which is progressing. Although, right, it's volunteer group, many cooks in the kitchen sort of issues. S-Bomberama, I presented some stuff on VEX, mostly updates, just a sort of update as the VEX working group for that audience. I did make some VEX graphics, which I'd be happy to share or contribute somewhere if they're useful. Partly to address, well, I think there's a lot of different opinions about what VEX is still out there. And at SBOM-orama, we had a lot of new folks. So I went to pictures because Krob told me to. Or I was inspired by Krob, I guess I'll put it that way.
Thank you.
But nothing super substantial there. There are some, occasionally I see VDR, let's see, vulnerability disclosure report. Have we talked about this in this group?
We
There's some
haven't.
VEX.
Is that the thing our mutual friend was ranting about in the issue?
Yeah, it is. And I want to be respectful about it, but there's VDR versus VEX is the framing that I hear a lot. And I have both factual, I believe, and opinions that is not the case, but there's sort of some loud voices saying that. I'm not sure we need to or want to address that here, but we might. CISA is looking at it from the VEX working group point of view because perception and PR and all sorts of reasons. So that's a small issue going on. Otherwise, SBOM-orama, there wasn't much more on VEX. Had a very slight inkling. Going back in SBOM history, the healthcare sector who was involved in the SBOM work has done more than one, a number of what they call proof of concepts, where they basically, I think, right, they have vendors try to create SBOM and then consumers try to consume it and do stuff with it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a hint that they might try to do something like that with VEX, but I didn't really follow up yet, and I don't know how much volunteer appetite or interest there is, but I will suggest with a bit of my CISA VEX working group co-chair hat on that writing more papers is losing power, and trying something might be time for doing stuff as opposed to writing stuff.
So isn't that, I know it's not CISA doing it, but Omar's VEX Summit, isn't that kind of going to achieve that goal of like a bake-off, so to speak?
Yeah, it very well may. And again, that just post VEX, SBOM-orama. I'm thinking about what would be useful to do in the VEX working group, and engaging in such work sounded interesting and useful as opposed to writing another paper. It's entirely possible that could be, cooperative with VEX Summit or something else. I wouldn't want to sort of duplicate effort fully, but really just a notion at this point.
And that's, I guess we can kind of, any questions about the VEX working group from CISA or SBOM-orama before we move on to the VEX Summit? All right, so Omar from Cisco has started up a effort to try to get different people that are working in the VEX space together to do a little dog and pony shows and demonstrations, kind of a bake-off, so to speak, to see how people can actually start making VEXes. And I talked with Puerco, and he and I both have signed up, but I would strongly encourage everyone in this group to, if you have the time, consider joining. So you have to sign up, and then they'll send you an email at some point in the future with more details about it. And I would really encourage the development wing of this group to maybe put together an OpenVEX little demo with our command line tools, and maybe talk about some of the efforts of us trying to get upstream to start thinking about it and issuing VEXes. And the Cisco perspective is probably going to be more vendor focused, which is where like my thoughts about the VDF conversation, which is, I feel, out of scope for a lot of open source projects and upstream maintainers. It very much may be in scope for those of us that work for commercial companies. But for, if our mission is to try to help upstream and open source primarily, VDF is not necessarily something that they would do. But I think that some of the theme of the VEX Summit is going to focus around commercial tools and kind of commercial implementations of things. So I would, again, it looks like Yotam said he was going to come. I would really consider, I'd strongly encourage you all to sign up if you can make it. And, I think this group should probably do presentations just to kind of show our tools and kind of talk about how we maybe strategize a bit on how we can start to get upstream issuing some of these things so that downstream consumers can start to understand how they're going to tie all these things together. Any additional questions on that? All right, and then the last, actually, I have two things. Before we go to NVD, I had sent a note out, I believe, to the vulnerability disclosures group and then a couple Slack channels. There is a high probability that early next year, a lot of the groups that are involved in vulnerability disclosure, vulnerability reporting, and vulnerability adjacent standards are going to assemble next year. So think about things like the CVE board, things like the CVSS SIG, EPSS, things like VEX. So they're looking at potentially creating a vulnerability focused conference early next year. And I think this group in particular, the vulnerability disclosure working group overall, but this group in particular should strongly consider participating once we get more details. It's going to be a multi-day series of events where people will be talking about CSAF and VEX and all the other fun things around vulnerability disclosure. So as I get more details about that, I will share with this group, but I would, again, much like the VEX Summit, I would encourage us to be there in the room and participate, share ideas, share the perspective of open source, and kind of understand how some of these new that folks on this call may not be familiar with EPSS, and think about how we might be able to integrate some of those things upstream or not. It might be too heavy for and burdensome for upstream. But maybe our corporations might benefit from it. But so as I get more details about VulnCon, I'll be sharing here. I'll be talking about this in the vulnerability disclosure working group later this week. And then I'll be talking about it with the OSV team my Thursday evening to try to raise awareness and kind of help carve off some time. Do you recall, Art, when just the kind of swag suggestion of a time was?
Sorry, is this for VulnCon?
VulnCon, yeah.
I don't. But I just commented in one of the Slacks. The CVE something program board. CVE holds a summit. It's called a CVE summit about twice a year, and there was discussion there as well recently after the last one of doing something bigger. So there could be some, hate to say the word, but synergy or some way to align those things, right, to maximize, right, focus, concentration, energy, people. I do not recall dates at all.
I think they were initially targeting sometime first quarter next year, but again,
Sounds about right. Yeah.
As I get more information, I'll be glad to share that with people. And I think we have a great perspective to offer. And in this group, I think we've got some exciting tools and ideas to share. Any questions about that? All right. And then lastly, this morning, I got an exciting email from Dr. Wheeler mentioning he had a conversation with the nice folks over at NIST somebody Brewer. Give me a minute. And
Anya Brewer.
Tanya Brewer. Yep.
Yeah.
And they are considering
Oh, yes, Madison.
creating some type of group focused around improving the National Vulnerability Database, which we all know and love. It's near and dear to our hearts. It's the giant database of vulnerabilities in the sky, and they are looking to partner with private organizations and public organizations on how that thing might be improved. So there's going to be a formal notice in the U.S. Federal Register, which is a publication that goes out about activities of the U.S. federal government. But they're looking to, they're kind of doing a light RFC to see if there's interest from groups. And I, again, suggested that the Vulnerability Disclosure Working Group, OSV, and OpenVEX would potentially have interest in participating on how we can improve the NVD and the sharing of data and making it more open source friendly, so that we can not be very burdensome on maintainers and projects, so that we can find better ways to integrate, make it more agile and kind of friendly towards rapid development practices. And like the OSV team is already has talked with NVD in the past and has expressed interest. They would like to collaborate because CVE and NVD are not as easy for open source developers to engage with as it is for large organizations. So I think patches and feedback are welcome, and then they're just kind of asking around if anyone would be interested in potentially getting together and trying to improve it. And I can see from the crowd, we have an overwhelming amount of support. Yay. All right. Yeah. Thank you for thumbs and hearts. Good. So I'll as I get more details, I'll circle back with this group and kind of more formally share. We may be asked to put together some type of like a white paper proposal of, why we would, what we'd like to see and what we offer. But as that happens, I'll share with the team. Any questions?
Cool. No questions, but all sounds like solid initiatives. So looking forward.
Yeah, and then I would probably, I know they aren't part of the foundation, but I would probably try to reach out to the GSD folks, just to have, so we're complete in kind of different open source perspectives of sharing vuln information. But for sure, OSV, I think should be at the table for that. And we will want to see how technologies like VEX will be passed through and used by NVD and all the NVD consumers.
Rob, I think you said there would be likely be a Federal Register notice to officially sign up or attend or something.
Yes.
And so far it's just informal. Okay, thanks. Yep.
Yeah, so far it's just informal. But I feel that they'll get a lot of positive feedback, that people are interested in collaborating on the problems and the solutions. So I think they'll get a lot of feedback that people are interested in working on this problem.
I think they will too. What I wonder is what will happen afterwards, but
yeah,
we can only try. Yep.
Yeah. Again, we have open source behaves differently than commercial and federal entities, and we want to make sure that our perspective that we can interact with and feed into those systems so that all users of software can benefit.
I have a half go back, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I can wait if you want.
Yeah, no.
Oh, actually,
that's all I had to talk about today.
Actually, Madison has in the chat.
Sorry, yeah. Has
yeah.
NVD already made a decision to support VEX, or are they still considering that?
Unknown.
Yep. I would agree with Crow. It might be less than unknown. I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure they're aware, but I suspect that would be the sort of thing that might, that, you know, the timing and the topic might be good for this supposed, you know, alleged coming up group or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I've been a
yeah.
little out of the loop. I was making sure I didn't miss that a decision was already made.
I don't believe so, at least not publicly.
Yeah, and just from our experiences in the CISA VEX working group, there's still a lot of there's a lack of clarity from a lot of people about what VEX is and what its role is. So I think that folks are still kind of waiting to get that ironed out. So I wouldn't expect NVD is going to adopt anything until it's a little more formalized.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
and this is fine, but they're not often an early adopter of
Yeah.
new stuff. Yeah.
Also why I was surprised.
Yeah. No, which is, you know, someone should be an early adopter. Maybe it shouldn't be NVD. That's fine. Just yeah. But that reminded me. Oh yeah. So sorry, what is it? Is it Vol Summit?
VolCon.
No, Vex. Sorry, no, Vex Summit. I'm sorry.
Vex Summit.
Vex Summit.
Yep.
Vex Summit. I just read the blurb again, and we'll probably attend virtually anyway. But CSAF. They're going to be all CSAF'd up because that's fine, but that's their choice of format. So, with my OpenVEX hat on, right, proofs of concept experiments, trying stuff out, great. Preferable to me at this point to writing more papers saying how to do it without having tried to do it yet. Doing it with CSAF is great. Doing it with Cyclone DX is great. Doing it with SPDX is great. Doing it with, I saved the best for last, right? OpenVEX would be great. And you know whether or not, basically, my read of that blurb is it's not going to be a bake-off. It's going to be how to do it with CSAF, which again, totally fine.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm interested in all attempts to use VEX and see if it's helpful and works and what's missing and how do you do it at scale and all that stuff. We may want to do an OpenVEX related thing somewhere, which may not be at the VEX Summit somehow. So that's all. Just to say that VEX Summit is great. I support all VEX things mostly, but if we want to test OpenVEX, they may not be covering that with the CSAF technology.
So
that's a great idea.
Is it contradictory though? Like, couldn't you use basically have a CSAF contain a VEX and that VEX could be in an OpenVEX format?
I don't believe so. There's a VEX. Sorry, there's a CSAF. They call it a profile. There's CSAF, you know, JSON for CSAF itself, and there's a bit of a profile for some extra bits for VEX. And there's an interesting duplication of VEX status affected because the CSAF document elsewhere already has that some software is affected by a vulnerability. Otherwise, you would not be issuing CSAF in the first place. Just noticed that today. So I don't believe, you know, we could talk to the CSAF folks. Certainly, they're very receptive, and it's an OASIS. It's a OASIS standard. But I suspect they would not be interested in replacing their JSON with OpenVEX, but we certainly could ask. But this just, you know, the usual thing here, this might get to, right, something that extracts, you could extract VEX from CSAF and produce OpenVEX, right? There's all the translation tools that are probably not written yet. There's a lot of ways to look at this and try it. And again, we could certainly ask or open an issue or talk to the CSAF group about that. But my suspicion is they've got it, you know, done, and they're not gonna just change for the heck of it, right?
Yeah. So basically, it's an interoperability issue.
Like all of these things, right? We have 4 formats, great. So we need 4. How many converters? 7, 23, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, and thinking about
16.
the primary producers and consumers of CSAF, these are commercial companies and commercial enterprises. CSAF isn't necessarily something that upstream projects are going to adopt out of their kindness of their heart. It's kind of heavy and big and adds latency to their workflows. So now, like if, for example, Madison's team was able to, as every GitHub advisory also generated a CSAF, that might be a potential avenue that upstream may have CSAFs. But with the majority of projects being a 1 or 2 person project, they're not going to, that's not worthwhile work for them to make this big, heavy thing. They're going to do whatever it is they're doing, or something that's simple and automatable.
GitHub advisory, OSV, whatever.
Yep. And the CSAF people may need to figure out a way to, if upstream, whatever format upstream is giving the advisory in, they may need to figure out some way to ingest that and reconfigure it into their format for commercial.
Yeah. That might actually be a bigger, it's a bigger issue, but might be a more interesting thing to look at is, and this is again the point to me of some kind of exercises or proofs of concept is, what's the whole end-to-end look like? Any part of it, but if upstream is open source, which it often is, and they issue in one format, can I turn that into CSAF without much extra work? Does the VEX stuff translate properly? All fun tricks.
Apache security or Kubernetes may have the team and the willpower to do something big like CSAF. They might not. I think developers will be more inclined to toss something in their CI pipeline that barfs out SPDX or Cyclone or OpenVEX. It's easier.
Red Hat, purveyors of fine, open free, source free software, do CSAF and VEX. I double checked this at SBOMorama.
And Red Hat is also a commercial enterprise serving commercial enterprises, and they don't necessarily represent the upstream.
No, understood. Just pointing out that yes.
And I'm sure SUSE and Canonical and AWS, whatever they call their thing, and Azure Linux, but that isn't Sally or Jimmy, the upstream open source maintainer that has opportunities with all the security tasks being heaped on them. Any other thoughts or comments? I think a lot of opportunity ahead of us. This is a pretty exciting space, and I think that we have some great perspectives to collaborate with the ecosystem with. All right, well, hearing no other topics, I will adjourn us for the day. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll be talking about a lot of these topics again in the 2 vulnerability disclosure working group calls later this week. So if you're excited about that, come join the conversation. And if you've already heard it, you could potentially have a little snooze while we chat about those in those calls.
Quick question there. Well,
yes, Brandon.
Doesn't even need to be a question because these are biweekly, right? So
these are biweekly, yes.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you're going to do one next Monday, but we aren't. So problem solved.
Yeah. And then the next call will be focused on the spec and the command line tool. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time and information and your participation, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Greg.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.